Hello, my unremarkable friends. Listen, you've been sold a system that drains you. Six figures, but at the cost of your soul. I know because I was there. Hustle culture promises you can have it all if you just work harder, sleep less, optimize every second. The reality is burnout, anxiety, and a constant feeling that you're never quite enough. I experienced five redundancies over a decade. The system felt fundamentally broken for someone like me. And the moment of truth came when I realized that the entire professional treadmill was designed to monetize my time and ultimately serve someone else's ends. It wasn't a personal failure, it was a structural one. I was caught in that frantic chase, sending out job applications and competing with hundreds of other candidates. That's when I decided to stop the treadmill entirely and launched my business and my podcast, Culture Crush. Culture Crush successfully replaced my income and built a really meaningful community. And honestly, the work felt really good and thousands joined the journey. But increasingly, it was slightly misaligned with the deeper calling that was emerging through the work. And that's when everything changed again. The constraint that finally forced my hand was a beautiful one. My wife and I were expecting our first child, and time suddenly became the most precious resource I ever had. The old way of doing things, the constant chasing, the feeling of aimless building, was no longer an option. I had to get efficient, not just busy. This forced a massive shift. Instead of looking for the next external playbook, a guru's formula, or a boring business book, I turned inward. I dove into my own project archives, 15 years of notes, half-finished project plans, workshop materials, and old articles. Yeah, it was a mess, but it was my mess. What I found there wasn't a revolutionary idea or a secret blueprint. It was something more powerful. The accumulated weight of incremental learning, all those unremarkable notes, the projects I'd started and abandoned, the small insights I'd jotted down and forgotten, they weren't failures. They were assets. For example, I found a half-written article about how my redundancies had forced me to develop unfair advantages. Breadth instead of depth, the ability to command any room or to lead any team. At the time I'd written it, it felt like a justification. But looking back with fresh eyes, I realized it was documentation of actual strengths. When viewed together, they revealed a pattern, a unique set of skills and perspectives that I couldn't have gotten from any course or book. That was my unfair advantage. It was already built. This led to the most important shift. I stopped trying to create something new from scratch and started leveraging what was already there. I began connecting the dots between my past experiences in a way that no one else could. For example, my experience in corporate training, combined with my writing, combined with my understanding of community dynamics, created a unique offering that felt authentic and effortless to deliver. I wasn't building a new persona. I was finally integrating all the parts of myself that I'd previously kept in separate boxes. The work, it felt less like performance and more like practice. It was sustainable because it was aligned. The pressure to be remarkable vanished because I was finally working from a place of genuine strength, not perceived weakness. The breakthrough wasn't hiding in someone else's playbook. It was waiting in my own story, patiently accumulated over years of simply showing up. This personal discovery directly shaped the evolution from Culture Crush to the Unremarkable Entrepreneur. Culture Crush was born from a place of beautiful curiosity. I wanted to learn from fascinating people doing meaningful work. And that was exactly right for that season. But hosting those conversations taught me something deeper. I started to see a pattern emerge from the guests who truly resonated. People like Justin Foster, talking about serving the work instead of worshipping the outcome. Or Steve Chalk on building movements from the margins. Or Tahira Jamani, showing how constraints can become creative fuel. They were all circling the same fundamental territory. What struck me about Justin's conversation was just the idea itself. It was that I was living it without naming it. Steve's work validated something I felt building Culture Crush, that real movements grow from the edges, not the center. And Tahira's insights on constraints landed so powerfully because I was about to experience my own constraints becoming my greatest creative fuel. The central question wasn't, how do I go viral? It was, how do you build something sustainable when the world demands spectacular? This question became the core of everything. I realized that resonance matters infinitely more than reach in the long term. A small, deeply connected community that trusts you is far more important than a large, disengaged audience. This is why building with constraints like limited time, a specific niche, or rejection of growth at all costs isn't a limitation. It's the ultimate creative fuel. Constraints force you to be more intentional, more innovative, and more authentic. The Unremarkable Entrepreneur is the practice of answering that question. It's the shift from learning from others to discovering together. It's for the person who's tired of the noise, who suspects that there's a different way to build a business and a life, one that honors your nature instead of forcing you into a mold. This isn't about rejecting success. It's about redefining it on terms that don't require you to sacrifice your well-being. It's about understanding that the most sustainable growth comes from depth, not from breadth, and that your most valuable asset is the unique, unremarkable story that only you can tell. So, what does this new focus look like in practice? Well, it means sharpening everything with intention. The podcast continues. You're listening to it right now. But instead of broad conversations about culture and community, we're going deep on the unremarkable practices that create remarkable, sustainable businesses. Solo episodes, article read-throughs, planning sessions with successful entrepreneurs, and short interviews, they're all coming soon and deeply centered on how to move from theory into practice. And I'm writing a book, The Unremarkable Entrepreneur. I'm writing it in public, one article at a time. There'll be weekly explorations of the ideas that form the foundation of unremarkable entrepreneurship. We'll break down concepts like why the increment is the way, especially when pressure demands giant leaps. We'll explore how to serve the work instead of worshipping the outcome, and why resonance will always beat reach if you're building for the long term. This is where the real thinking and application happens, delivered straight to you. And sure, there'll be a short newsletter, a roundup of what's been working and where there's friction, and links to the latest releases. So, who is this all for? It's for the exhausted corporate escapee who's tired of funnel fatigue and being sold another proven system. It's for the person who's done with personal brand theater and platform slavery. It's for anyone who suspects that ordinary actions built consistently over time might actually be the secret to building something that lasts. This is not for the person still chasing viral tactics or the next big launch. It's for the 1% who are ready to build a practice instead of performing for a business. Practically speaking, what changes? Well, the content becomes more focused. We're moving from broad culture conversations to specific business practices you can implement. We're trading wide-ranging curiosity for deep, applicable discovery. What stays exactly the same is the heart of what made Culture Crush special. The commitment to community, the vulnerability in sharing the real journey, and the belief in meaningful connections. The container is changing, but the core values are not just staying, they're being amplified because now they have a clearer purpose. I have 3 simple invitations for you as we make this shift. First, subscribe to the newsletter. That's where the foundational work is going to be happening each week. Second, stay subscribed to the podcast. The conversations will continue, but they'll be focused on living this path. And third, engage. Comment with your own unremarkable wins. This new chapter is about discovering together, and your voice is essential to that process. Now, let me be very clear. This new focus isn't for everyone, and that's exactly the point. It's for the small percentage of people who value practice over performance, depth over vanity metrics, and are willing to build something that might take longer but will actually last. If you're tired of the hustle and you're ready to build from a place of authentic strength, then this is your invitation. I know asking you to follow me in something new requires trust, especially after Culture Crush felt so complete. I'm not taking that lightly. Join the newsletter for practical work, stay with the podcast for the conversations, and engage to be part of the community. Thank you for every moment of connection over the past year. The foundation Culture Crush provided was essential. And for those of you who are joining this new chapter, welcome to the Unremarkable Entrepreneur.